Hello, what's Forest Focus are Nottingham Forest really going to leave the City Ground? It's starting to look like they might after reading Chairman Tom Cartledge's interview in The Athletic today. We'll discuss that prospect as well as previewing a massive game against Chelsea in the company of, first of all, Pete Blackburn. Pete, afternoon, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Nice to join you on a lovely sunny day. How are you?
I'm all right. It's a lovely sunny day. Michael Temple is fresh from an afternoon at the gym. How are you doing, Temps?
I wasn't working out. It's very much a relaxing visit. So yeah, feeling good. Day off. Summer's here. Talking Forest for you boys.
That would be my kind of gym visit. Not exercise is not my thing. Right, let's get into. Well, we'll start with the stadium, which is a bit weird because we've got a massive game on the horizon, but it's what everyone's talking about today, and we'll try and reflect that here. It's all based on an interview with Tom Cartledge in The Athletic, where he discusses the prospects of a move to a 50,000 seat stadium out of town, potentially with a big Man City-esque campus where we have a training park as well. All sounds very ambitious. I'll come to Temps first. Consistently you've said you think this is all a negotiating tactic. The more I read the article and read some of the quotes, it feels to me ever more that it's not. And I actually frankly question if it's actually certainly what Tom Cartledge wants and what the club wants. There's a quote here before I come to you, Temps. You just say here, the rent, if you add up to the next 33 years that the council wants, is 9.5 million. The proposed rent the council wants us to pay over 250 years is more than 250 million. So if we're talking openly about the Football Association's desire for financial stability and the future of clubs to be secure, it's wrong for us to sign up and put this club in a position where we have to pay 250 million rent to stay here. That's the kind of top spin to me that Andy Murray would be proud of, because that is a pretty extended period of time to be paying that rent. So, yeah, as my question was, do you think this is actually what Forest want now, or are you worried it's going to happen or not?
Tom's an excellent operator, very well networked, and through Hanley House and the group of companies that he looks after, he knows the city better than everyone, from master planning, from working with the councils, from understanding where these pockets of land are and how they might be used in the future. So he's the man with the qualified opinion. So yeah, well worth reading that article and taking from it what you will. I still think, despite his obvious capability to be the man that could bring this to fruition, and his obvious ability to sell this into the ownership and the Forest fans, when you talk about things like the Manchester City campus, I do still think at this stage it's a negotiating tactic. And the reason I say that is because if plan A was to move away from the City ground, Forest would just do it without posturing about the relationship with the council, about the future fees. If that's plan A and what we want and what we want to do, you can't do that at the City ground. You're landlocked. There's a river on one side. There's a main road on the other. It's never going to happen. And that just suggests to me that we are trying everything that we can, including identifying options B, C, D, totem sidings, wherever it may be, to demonstrate to the City Council that there are other options and they won't be strong-armed into paying the fee that's been quoted by Tom there. But if it's truly the answer, why don't we just do it? So yeah, I just want to endorse Tom. His specialism is this. It's not mine. He's got a very different skill set to Nicholas Randall, who came in to give instant credibility to the ownership, to negotiate deals, contracts, make relationships. Tom's expertise is in the development of major infrastructure projects, in placemaking, in negotiating, in architecture, and bringing this stuff to fruition. So yeah, I do believe his wish is probably mega complex away from the City ground, but it would be a hard thing to sell to Forest fans until we see A, shiny pictures, and B, a land purchase somewhere else. And the final thing I'd say is, you don't just walk away from the City ground for free. There'll be all kinds of DLAP clauses and things we have to do to put that space back into get it to a point where we can hand it back to the City Council at the end of any particular lease. So you don't walk away from the City ground for free either. Commercial borrowings at a recent high, building materials costs are at an all-time high. So there's no easy option here, unless there's a successful negotiation to extend the lease of the City ground. And I still think that's the most likely option. unless, again, the ownership can buy the freehold. So a long way to run on this, extremely complex. The best man is in charge and running this. I'm just dubious that plan A is mega complex. I think it's pay less to stay at the City Ground.
Just before I come to Pete, I mean, we both worked in the media. In fact, all three of us worked in the media. Do you think, Temps, there's an element of some curiously timed testing the water with the fan base here with these quotes as well?
Yeah, that's what you do, isn't it? If there's a big policy change or a big project on the horizon, you socialize it internally, and then with your fans, your members, your supporters, whatever group that may be. So yeah, absolutely right. And it's going to create a debate, isn't it? And at some point in time, we'll see pictures of what this mega complex can look at. And you only need to have to look at Leicester City or Man City to see what can be achieved when you invest heavily in a training base and you have the space, the finance, the resource to turn that not only into a great facility, but something that's going to add to the machinery of your football club, to develop players, to attract them, to nurture them, to have an advantage against your rivals. So yeah, I think to a point that is what's going off. There'll be polarized views, I'm sure, between the romantics like me, perhaps, who would like to stay at the City Ground, wholly bought in, by the way, to the development that's been mooted so far. I think images we've seen of the view from the Riverside, the new Peter Taylor stand, that are excellent and a massive leap forward for our football club. But yeah, in time, we may well be convinced that mega project is the way forward. But I'll repeat what I said. I still think most likely outcome is a facilitated negotiation to get to a point where we own the freehold or pay a fairer price for the leasehold to maintain our history and stay where we are.
If they can convince Pete that this is a good idea, then they'll be master salesmen indeed. So, Pete, let's say the club deliver 50,000 seat stadium, great facilities, the training complex we've all dreamed of, promise meets delivery. You know, we get kind of the Everton Stadium, the Man City, the Leicester City training ground, all combined in one. Are you ever going to accept that? Do you see merits or not?
Well, I suppose it's pretty irrelevant whether I accept it or not. I mean, the question itself has a big problem in it, as far as I'm concerned. There's the word "if." I mean, that "if" is doing it so much heavy lifting. It's incredible, really. If you consider the period of time that the ownership have been in charge and just how long we've had various promises about development of the stadium and the training ground and such like. I mean, a massive super football campus. I think we have to sort of, you know, I'll believe it when I say it, to be honest. Look, I'm not, you know, I think I've been on this pod twice before. We've discussed this subject, so a lot of people will know my views about it. Not remotely comfortable with the idea of leaving, and I don't buy that there's a sort of dead set, stone cold commercial answer to that being the thing that we have to do. I don't think we're remotely maximising the revenue that we can get out of the City Ground right now. It's pretty unloved in lots of places. I think there's an awful lot that could be done with it. For me, I guess to answer your original question, I don't think it's something that I would ever become an advocate for. In the past, there have been mooted attempts to look at that area of land at both Eastcroft and the Island site, I think. And those two areas, for anyone who doesn't know, they're sort of the area behind the old train station where Virgin Active is and all that sort of stuff in between London Road and Sneinton, I guess. In the past, I think those are areas that maybe I could have been more easily sold on, because they still would have felt like they were at the heart of this place that we call home, I guess. And that might have been a little bit easier for me. But there is still just too much attachment to the City Ground for me. And until we've reached a point where we've made the argument that we can't progress there, and it's a genuinely unarguable situation, for me, we stay. It means much more to me than what I think we might potentially get out the other end. I mean, I had a couple of people tweeting me today about the commercial revenue from match days only that Brighton are able to get from their stadium, similar size stadium to ours. Granted, it's more modern, and I'm sure there are more opportunities for corporate hospitality and stuff, but they make so much more of it, and there's no doubt we can do more. So no, I'm going to be pretty tough to convince. Toten to me just feels far too far away from our sort of spiritual home. And look, I mean, it may be the case that people accuse me, as I think I have done previously, of, it's a long way from where I live. It's a couple of buses and a tram or whatever, and I'm sure there's some of that involved in these arguments that we have. But like a couple of weeks ago, I went to see Boston play at Alfreton, and that's the same journey. It's not the journey that matters to me. It's what it means when you get there. And I know that I get sort of pigeonholed as doing some sort of romantic rants on this podcast sometimes.
Keep going, mate. I'm enjoying this one.
this stuff does matter to me. I think for me, the City Ground is the first time that I went to a match and smelled all those smells and heard the roars. It was seeing homegrown talents who, were people like me from local schools who are out on that grass that we all gathered around. It's like watching that Paul Hart team develop. It was being part of that magnificent choir of voices when we played Sheffield United and we dragged that team over the line and we got to Wembley. And since then, it's been all of those amazing moments where we've overcome the odds against teams bigger than us that we didn't deserve to be, that we shouldn't really have been up against. And all of those things, all of those memories, that feeling when I see Trent Bridge and the City Ground when I'm getting a bus home from town after too many beers, that stuff all matters to me. And so I'm never going to be sold by the mega campus, particularly because I don't really believe that it's, I'm not convinced that's a realistic option. We've had time to make progress on what we've got already at the City Ground, and nothing's happened. So, I think leaping to a development that's much more significant than that just seems like pie in the sky to me right now.
Let me ask you some back of the fag packet questions, maths questions, Temps. Just before that, thank you very much to Greg Harrison for signing up to become a member. Appreciate that, Greg. Right, so Everton's new stadium, 52,000 capacity, is budgeted at about 500 million, Temps. This is very inexact because it's in the city centre, it's got transport links and everything, and that would be a big issue here with Toten. Leicester's training ground cost 100 million, state of the art stuff. So very back of the fag packet math, 600 million to get an extra 10,000 seats. Is it? But the big thing, as Pete says, is the corporate income that you get from these new stadiums is massive. Is that the big thing here? Because you can speak from experience. You've worked at the London Stadium. You know what it's all about. Give us a bit of just some thoughts on that in general.
Well, the mega projects in London are built around multi-use. So Spurs dive out and have the first £1 billion mortgage in football, but they commercialise it straight away through heavy corporate usage, through the NFL being there, through Jay-Z and Beyonce being there, through Premier Rugby being there, and maximising the number of events. But there's only certain cities and territories where you could do that. Forest have done extremely well to take that there this summer, but there's no stadium concert market firmly established in Nottingham in the way there is in London. The NFL aren't looking to host games in provincial cities, so you have to do your maths in a slightly different way to the London boys, because you are primarily opening a stadium to operate for 19 days a year to host a Premier League season. Broadcast is king. So the three commercial revenue streams: match day, commercial partnerships, commercial income, and broadcast. Broadcast is still by far the biggest. But now what we're seeing is the need to get past the Brightons of this world means you have to ratchet the other two as well. We don't like the fact that they've been so aggressive on the price rises. So we have to get to a point where there are more seats to sell and football can remain affordable, because until that time comes, their only way to drag in more revenue from the match days is to charge more for your shirts, your beers and the tickets. So the logic is sound. On a new site or at a City Ground, get yourself to 40,000 plus, and all of a sudden you do have the revenue to have a wage structure which dwarfs the bottom quarter of the Premier League, and that's where we're trying to get to. But is that the same if you're trying to finance £600 million to build a 50,000 seater new build in Toten? I'm not sure it is. That's going to be interest bearing. That's going to need to generate a lot of money, and I'm not convinced that Nottingham or the outskirts of Nottingham, more to the point, lend themselves to multi-use in quite the way the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, London Stadium does. So massive challenge. Telephone numbers required to finance it. The precipice of relegation, putting your very club at risk, as we've seen with Everton in recent times, who would be in dire straits if they hadn't have got themselves out of trouble in quite the way they did back end of the season. So huge risk, deep pockets required, solidity in the Premier League required, and that's the ambition that we all share. But this decision is seismic for the club.
Yeah, and I worry that 50,000 is too big, really, isn't it? If we get relegated, then you're not going to get 50,000. If people, the gloss of the Premier League wears off as well, and we're in it for 10 years, and we're where Palace are we going to get 50,000? I don't know. That concerns. I don't think we need it as a football club. Just extending on from that, Pete, I've got one more question for Temps at the end. I mean, the council haven't said anything. I see there's a councillor, Steve Battlemuch, who's a listener to this podcast, I think, Steve, who said that, effectively the council still want to talk and Forest, are also at a bit of a standoff here, effectively. Is it the case that, butt some heads together as a fan, this is what you would want to see? A lot of fans would want to see this, get back around the negotiating table, especially after a general election. You don't want to bring politics into it necessarily, but it feels as though with the council effectively run by central government now because of its financial state, once there's a general election and things might change, can we finally butt some heads and start talking again?
I really hope so. I mean, you can't take politics out of this, I'm afraid, because it's political anyway, but it's even more political because of the state of the city council and the situation with the external commissioners, as you say. Last time I was on this podcast, I said that last time I was on talking about this, I said that from what I was hearing, I was concerned that this was becoming more than a sort of negotiating tactic. And from what I've heard from people who are close to both sides of negotiations or have had access to people close to both sides of negotiations recently, it's pretty much unanimously been the case. The people that I've spoken to have said that they think this is a genuine direction of travel now, and that the club are moving away from the City Ground being the primary option. Now, it may be that Temps is right, and I really hope he is, and that what they're doing is good politics and they're playing a strong hand. I'm really concerned that it's not the case for people like me who obviously want to stay. I mean, I think I said on Twitter today that I think it's worth bearing in mind that we've really only had one side of this story now. For various reasons, the council haven't spoken about how they see the picture. And as you said, Steve Battlemuch has commented on Twitter today. I'm fairly sure that he's been involved pretty directly in the process and the negotiations that took place between the council and the football club. So it's worth listening to what he has to say, just as it is worth listening to what Tom has to say. If the football club are keen to play this out in public, which is how they seem to be doing, then I think that they should communicate with fans honestly and say what they think is a reasonable, outline what they think is reasonable, because all they're doing so far is saying that the city council are unreasonable and that they won't negotiate. But we need to hear both sides of that story. So I hope that in the coming days and weeks, the city council come out, and I know that there are people petitioning them to do that, come out and have their say. And hopefully after both sides have been heard and the public debate continues, we can then get to a point where negotiations return, because it doesn't sound like that's been the case for an awfully long time now. Certainly sounds like pretty much no progress has been made whatsoever. I really don't understand why that's the case. You can only make your own personal judgments about why that is the case. It seems to me absolutely mad that we're in a situation where both parties aren't committed to staying where they are, because it makes total financial sense, as far as I can see, for Forest to develop a 40,000-seater stadium where we are, in the most iconic location, in the country, more or less. Being able to make massive improvements for an awful lot less money than it would take to move far away from where we are now, at the real hub of the area. And it makes an awful lot of sense for the city council to stick to that arrangement as well. And also, the county council, I would have thought, had a pretty big interest in it staying, despite they're clearly desperate to drive a move elsewhere. Because, I mean, West Bridgford it'll be a massive impact on West Bridgford if the football club moves. There's an awful lot to consider about this stuff. But all I can say is I think it would be really helpful if we had views from all sides, so that we could, in the public, have a better sense of where we are on this, but that people just get around the table and thrash this out, because the amounts of money that we're talking about, there's just no way that makes sense that they're still arguing over it and not coming to some sort of compromise. I find it absolutely staggering that they're arguing over sums that may be £400,000 or £500,000 a year in the sort of industry and the environment we're talking about.
One last one for Temps before we move on, because I want to get to talking about the football. Any final thoughts on it, Temps? And also, there's an argument I see on Twitter. Well, we moved stadium. This is the price of keeping tickets down. I don't think it makes any difference to ticket prices if we're selling them out. You look at Spurs are raising their prices and everything. This isn't. It wouldn't be like an altruistic thing to keep prices down, would it? If we're still selling, selling well in the Premier League.
There's a big old season ticket waiting list now, Matt. I don't think we'd have too much trouble, but it doesn't. It's supply and demand, right? I'm going to get absolutely caned for these LinkedIn phrases like that. There, yeah. But yeah, we want to see a full ground, and there's a certain amount of elasticity in pricing. You'll sell 10,000 at X or 15,000 at Y. So I hope it gives the opportunity to keep the entry point affordable, to ensure that young people, children in particular, don't find themselves priced out, and they can have the same introduction to Forest that us three will have had as kids walking in there for the first time. But I hate to say it, the Premier League's a business. It's big business. It's a global business. We're all fortunate to live close enough to be match attending fans. And yeah, we need to be considered in this. In the same breath that we're all saying we don't want to leave the City ground, I'm seeing constant comments about the hot water and the queues for the ladies' toilets and everything else. So if we are to stay at the City ground, let's show it some love. Let's improve it. Let's get to the 40,000 cap through the considered upgrade of the Peter Taylor stand. And I think ultimately let's back our chairman and our owner to negotiate a purchase of the freehold, because I think at the point that happens, their investment is secured and they'd be more than happy to lay bricks on the current site.
Matt, can I just... Sorry, yes. I was just going to ask if I could add one really quick thing on it before we move on from the stadium chat. Look, I know I'd probably get criticised sometimes for being a little bit too hard on the football club, but I just wanted to say I think this is it's unbelievable how insensitively this is all being handled and how poor the timing of it is. Not only have we just had a season card issue where fans have been tremendously riled and in many cases upset and disappointed and what have you about how the club has handled that process and how they haven't put fans at the heart of that process with proper engagement and the outcome and such like. For the chairman to be happy to go on record with a sit-down interview to talk about the stadium news at this point, a few games of the season left, really key time in terms of the on-the-pitch situation, and just in the wake of having not done that when the fans were desperate for someone at the club to speak to them about what decisions they'd made and why they had made them, that strikes me as tremendously insensitive and pretty disappointing.
I was trying to find a comment that was funny and summed it up, saying supporting Forest like having a meth-fueled raccoon living in your basement. It's always constant chaos, and there's always something to talk about, certainly. Right, good discussion, lots of different viewpoints there. Hopefully we've covered it off for everyone until the next time it's raised. Just before we move on to talking football then, Forza Fest is at the Trent Navigation Saturday the 8th of June. Tickets £15. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see a QR code there that you can scan to get yours. Otherwise, it's on via gigantic.com. Acts include The Chase, Greg Mitchell's favourite band in the world, The Public's Boardmaster.
Is that Bradley Walsh, Matt? Sorry to interrupt the promo, but is he singing that, or is it just sharing a brand?
I don't know. Good question. Right, thank you. And many more acts. I'm sure it will be a lovely occasion. Gates open at 2 p.m. That was almost my most polished ad promo yet, and that's just barrels in there. We'll try again next time. Right, let's talk football then. Obviously, we all know that a good result for Forest or even a bad result for Forest might secure Premier League safety. How are you feeling about this game, Pete?
I'm positive and optimistic. I generally tend to be when we're heading into games, even against the big sides, because I like to think that those games where you're not expected anything are a bit of an opportunity, really. Obviously, there's pressure on it, and there may be more pressure on it depending on what happens elsewhere earlier in the day. look, Chelsea at the moment are a daunting prospect, I guess. That's probably not something we could have imagined saying, not an awfully long time ago. They seem to have found a real balance. Perhaps, I think, maybe forced by a few injuries that they've got. They found a sort of system that works for them. They look, from what I can see, a bit more consistent defensively in this sort of hybrid system where they drop to three at the back. Gives them a solid back three with Cucurella joining midfield, and then that's a platform for an awful lot of attacking Arsenal. It's a really fluid, dynamic bunch of Madueke, Mudryk, obviously Cole Palmer, Declan Gallagher breaking from deep now and joining them, and then Nicholas Jackson clearly has hit some form as well. So look particularly strong down the middle and on that right-hand side, with great sort of fluidity and dynamism, brilliant ball carriers all over the place, and goal threats everywhere. So there's plenty to be sort of concerned about from a Forest point of view if you're Nuno. But there's obviously good news as well. We all know the away form doesn't look particularly great for them over the course of the calendar year. I'm not totally sure how much we can really put on that, given that they look a very different team now to what they have done for most of that time. But I'm sure there's something that can be used there. They drew at Sheffield United last month, I think. Drew at Brentford in March. So it's obviously possible to get a result against this team. So I think those things are something that we can hang on to, I guess. And beyond all that stuff, I think Forest have got weapons. I constantly say, I think on this podcast, people are probably very bored of me saying that I think we've got the attacking talent to take a game to most teams in the league, and I fancy us to score against most teams and be a threat. And I think we saw that against Man City. Sheffield United was a very different performance. I think in incredibly edgy circumstances, so I probably wouldn't put too much on that. But we've shown before that we can take games to teams that are more impressive than us on paper, and I'd fancy us to give it a real go today at the weekend. And I guess the other point as well is I sort of look at that Chelsea team and I think, perhaps a bit like us, that's a really sort of hastily assembled group of players who were strangers not an awfully long time ago. And I wonder if that's something that we can work on. If we can show real intent from the off, the players can give the fans something to work with. I think maybe it's possible that we can create the sort of atmosphere that if we can get on top in a couple of moments, that we might be able to have an influence. We've seen what we can do from the stands before. I don't think we overrate that, and it feels like one of those games where we might be able to play our part.
Just looking at Chelsea's away fixtures this calendar year, they've only won one game, but they have played Liverpool, Man City, Aston Villa, Arsenal. They played all the top four, basically, and a few other decent sides. So I don't know how much we do or don't read into it. They're an interesting opponent, Thames. Pete kind of touched on what I was going to say there. They're quite young. They're quite off the cuff. They're very athletic. They're a bit different to some of the matchups we've had recently. How are you feeling about this game?
A lot of good players on that Chelsea side. A lot of individuals. It's clicked at times, hasn't it? And they've looked like frightening opposition, and other times they've fallen apart and had a period of results early season which belied the cash that they'd spent and the status that they've assumed since their first and then their second mega money takeover. Every individual that Pete Blackburn listed there would get into our side. That's a blunt fact. And I think that on their day, they can cause anyone problems. I think Cole Palmer as a goal-scoring midfielder, bagging 20 goals, is probably the closest thing we've seen to a Lampard, Gerrard in goal-scoring ability from that position in a long, long time. He looked for a period there that he might go toe-to-toe with Haaland in the goal-scoring stakes. So, yeah, Chelsea, credible opposition. And if we allow them space and allow their flair players to get amongst it, they have the ability to score goals home and away. However, I'm relaxed because, and I've got to be consistent, having already said this, I've been on the beach since we beat Sheffield United. I think that was the game that got us to the tally that Luton can't surpass. I've written off Burnley. I don't see Luton getting more than 29 points. And with our superior goal difference, I genuinely believe anything could happen to us in these next two games that wouldn't affect our status in the Premier League. Now, that's not what I want. I think we're more than capable of getting a point out of Chelsea, and I wonder if we'll set up to try and do that, to frustrate them. I want the season to finish with a positive bounce, to give the fans, Nuno, the players, that belief that we're onto something here, and we can go into the summer and the pre-season with reasons to be cheerful, reasons to be positive about the ways we're going to improve this football team. I fear that with 2 negative results, the managerial debates around certain players could be reopened, and perhaps even more importantly, us as fans would not be quite buying into the side in the way that we will be if we get positive results from remaining fixtures against Chelsea and Burnley. The side's in a good place, positive performance at Blades, every chance of getting something out of this game, but I have to say it, Luton aren't getting past 29 points.
I keep waiting for one of these clips to show up on Twitter getting 1,000 likes from Luton fans. Or look at this idiot, yeah, or worse. But I hope that doesn't happen and we survive. I suppose
no one uses the word idiot on Twitter. It's far more. What's the word? Vicious.
Yeah, protect our algorithms on YouTube here. The psychology of the weekend's really interesting, Pete. Obviously, we play after them. Maybe they both lose. We're safe. We relax. We win 2 games. Maybe we panic under pressure. Who knows? Are you as confident as Temps that Luton are going to completely blow up in these last 2 games and Burnley are going to play to form? Are you, as we get close to the game, are you panicked or not?
I'm neither panicked nor as confident as Temps.
No one's as confident as Temps.
No. Well, I think I said last time that I don't think I've ever been as confident about anything in my life as Temps is about this. But that's more just about me personally, to be honest. No, I think I buy Temps' analysis, to be honest. I think maybe I would sort of add a point onto that or something like that. You know, I feel like I can't be quite that confident, but I think I basically buy where he's at with it. And hopefully I'll still be buying where he's at with it, you know, when we're heading into the City Ground on Saturday, because obviously we'll know what's gone on elsewhere. I mean, I said to you earlier, Matt, that if you keep asking me these sorts of questions, I'm going to have to get a psychology degree, because I just have absolutely no idea what the impact on mindset and such like is. I mean, I guess overall you can only really play the hand that you're dealt in life. So I suppose that for Forest, that's either going to be knowing that the situation has improved even more because another game has gone for the rivals and we've got a chance to play about with freedom and go and do our thing, or things have tightened up and we have to use that pressure as motivation to be more assertive in the game and go from the off. That's all we can really do, isn't it? I think I just hope that the management and staff are absolutely on top of the players, and that there's a real strength of character about the group, and that we see that in these last 2 games. Because as Temp said, I think I'm very confident that we stay up, but I think he's totally right that the last 2 games will have a big impact on what might happen over the summer at the club. It doesn't take an awful lot to sway us from positions, I don't think, both internally and as fans. And I do think that there are real good, strong building blocks in place in terms of the squad, and that we could go and progress next year. But, you know, that could all be out of the window quickly, or certainly changed very quickly if we lose 2 games dreadfully, even if we stay up. And there are questions to be asked of the manager's role and various players, and the tone's negative. So fingers crossed we get really positive performances, and I'm pretty hopeful of that, because I think there's a good trend recently. You know, if you look at the form table over 6 games, I looked earlier, I think Chelsea are 6th in the table and we're 10th. And if you look at those 6 games, I'm sure Chelsea have got stuff to say about some of theirs as well. But I mean, I think most of us would make an argument that we've been pretty unlucky in the Everton and City games for various different reasons. So I think the form is pretty good, actually. We're obviously still making the odd mistake and not capitalising in front of goal, which is, you know, problematic and always will be. But hopefully that'll turn. I think the underlying numbers look good. The way that Forest are playing looks pretty good, and I'm confident that we can get something and we can end the season in style.
Just before we go on to our lineups, bear with me. We've got 3 sponsors for this episode, which I'm very grateful for, to help me do this 6 days a week. Second sponsor today is Home Move Estate Agents, as ever, with Forest fan Ben Sales. If you are selling your house or buying, then Ben is the man for you. Details of how to get in touch with him are in the description for this episode, and they are, of course, 5-star rated on Google, so do check them out. Right, you'll have to wait and see who the third sponsor is. Stay with us till the end. What an exciting hook that is. Goodness me. Right, let's start with Temps' team, as it's the top of the 3. This is what Temps is picking. I shall read it out as normal. Matt Sells in goal, a back 4 of Ola Aina coming in at right back, Willy Bolly, Murillo and Harry Toffolo at left back, Danilo and Yates in midfield with Elanga, Gibbs-White and Hudson-Odoi in behind Chris Wood. So 4-2-3-1 for you, Temps. What is the thinking there for this one?
I just think Toff's better than Montiel. And Aina has to accommodate that insertion into the team because he's the guy that can play right side. Bolly's the perfect for Murillo because of his ability in the air. I think he had his most poised game of the season on the ball against Sheffield United and allowed us to continue to play out from the back. The Danilo and Yates axis wasn't quite as I expected it to be. Danilo finding himself very deep lying while Yates pressed further up the pitch. But I think they have the right blend of endeavour and craft to complement each other. And as they play more together, they'll work out the positioning and the understanding of each other. And the front four picks itself. Yes, Taiwo had a couple of minutes from the bench, but I don't see him starting. We score goals and we're at our best when both Callum Hudson-Odoi and Anthony Elanga are playing from the start. And the big debate, 3 centre-halves versus 2 centre-halves, I want the extra man centre-mid. I know that Conor Gallagher, Cole Palmer in particular, can pop up and cause trouble between the lines. And I just think we need to deny them space in the middle of the park rather than at the tip of the arrow. So that's why I'm backing a back four against stronger opposition. That's why I'm backing Yatesy to continue doing what he's doing. And I know I'm going to be shot down in the comments for that. And yes, there are more technical footballers in our squad, but every time we sign someone, he puts in the graft, the endeavour, displaces them and is able to carry out a game plan. I too hope Sangare next season becomes what we want him to be in that spot. But I'm backing Yatesy between now and the end of the season. And you know what? I'm backing Chris Wood over Taiwo between now and the end of the season as well. I think that's the side that can get a result against Chelsea.
You come on to my question there that I was going to ask, slightly left field. Would you start Taiwo? Do you think he's done well against Chelsea? They like him as a player, but you still back Chris Wood then?
Yeah, look, Chris Wood has missed some chances in recent weeks that we've been surprised by because he was on such an excellent run of form from the turn of the year until 2-3 weeks ago. I could counter my own argument by saying Taiwo came in and scored those goals against West Ham and Arsenal, not off the back of any particular form, just because he seems to have that ability, that knack, that upper body strength to pull something out of the sky and do his thing. I think he'll get a longer cameo and he'll certainly have the fitness this weekend to be introduced from the bench midway through the second half if we need him. I just think that it's unlikely that he starts. And I think it's unlikely that he's able to start against Burnley and get through 70, 75 minutes before we introduce Chris Wood. So for me, the plan between now and the end of the season is to keep Chris Wood where he is, let them scrap ahead of the new season when I'd expect Taiwo to resume the shirt, resume control, if he can prove his fitness for the new campaign. But yeah, there's an understanding there now. I think the way that Gibbs, White, Elanga and Hudson-Odoi in particular, who's come to the form in recent weeks, they've learned to play with Chris Wood. They know what he's about. They know what he needs. And yeah, this could be the game that he breaks the little duck that he's on at the minute.
Yeah, and Taiwo's a great bench option. Even if we're chasing the game, those two together would be pretty chaotic. So yeah, I think that's how I would go, as you'll see in my team. We'll come to Pete's next. Interestingly, all three of us have got different formations with largely the same personnel. Pete has got Sells in goal, a back four of Montiel at right back, Bolly and Murillo, and then Ola Aina at left back. A midfield trio of Yates, Danilo, and Gibbs-White, Hudson-Odoi, Woods and Elanga up front. That's a bit of a rudimentary shape on the graphic there, Pete. It might be more nuanced than that, but talk us through your thinking.
Oh, it's loads more nuanced. I've got loads of diagrams and all sorts.
Well, I thought I should say to people, the amount of time Pete thinks about these teams, I'm surprised he's not like Y-Scout looking at scouting shapes of the opposition and everything. He does give this a lot of thought. So yeah, what's your thinking? Sorry, Pete.
Just to add on what Thames was just saying about Chris Wood, I think he's absolutely hit the nail on the head. I think it's just worth saying about Wood that he was running unbelievably hot, and there was absolutely no way that was going to continue. And anyone who thinks that he was going to be the best striker in the league for converting chances over a whole season is probably kidding themselves a bit. He's been brilliant for us, and even to drop down that list a little bit is absolutely fantastic. It's also worth saying that I don't think all of these chances that he's missing are absolute sitters. Particularly that first one against Sheffield United, I think he's done so well to craft that chance, and the finish is, very close to being brilliant. I think that's really worth saying about him. I think the narrative is growing a bit that he's just sort of standing in between the posts and keeps missing open goals. I really don't think it's that at all. He's been absolutely class. And for me, it's a no-brainer for him to be starting these games. And if Taiwo's fit enough to come off the bench for 15, 20 minutes, then absolutely brilliant, because he's a huge weapon. And he's probably more suited to that given his fitness situation than he is starting the game, I'd have thought. Anyway, sorry, to answer your actual question about the team. I'm basically on board with Temps that I think Temps' lineup is the best 11 that are fit at the football club right now. The reasons why I've got things slightly different. Firstly, I think keeping Ola Aina at left back is quite important right now. Two reasons. Firstly, he's got a hell of a link up with Hudson-Odoi, and I think that's really powerful and could potentially be the link up that changes the game for us in attack. Secondly, I'm pretty confident, despite not being a remote expert on this stuff, that he's our best one-on-one defender. And the threat is all on that side of the pitch. I mean, the threat's everywhere, but the real big threat is on that side of the pitch. And if I'm going to have someone dealing with Madueke and Cole Palmer moving around and taking positions up on the right and coming inside, I want it to be Ola Aina. So for me, that's the way I have to go. And despite thinking Toff is the more steady, more trustworthy player, particularly in a back four, I've gone with Montiel on the right. The only other change is to a slightly deeper three in midfield, I guess. I think there are non-negotiables in this team at the moment, and they're probably the wingers and Gibbs White, particularly because they're what makes us a team that can challenge and make an impact on games. So they have to be in that team. But given what we said earlier about this massive threat that comes straight through the middle of the pitch from Chelsea, with Gallagher breaking from deep, and then Palmer, Madueke, probably Mudryk or Sterling, all coming into central areas, there's going to be an awful lot of work to do in there. So for me, you need Yates, Danilo, and Gibbs White all in those slightly deeper areas out of possession. And to be honest, it may be the case that Temps and my formations are basically the same, and that's just tactical work, really. But I guess it's just an indication that I think Gibbs White is going to have to be a bit deeper, doing a slightly more disciplined role, like he was in the central midfield role when he was playing there in the 4 across. And he's going to have to break from there. And I don't think that needs to take away from his intent to impact the game in an attacking sense at all. But I do think it just sort of sets out our stall to have a balance between the threats that they can offer and what we can do as well. So that's where I'm at with it. I don't know if there's any more sort of issues that needed to be discussed from that lineup.
No, because we've done 42 minutes and we've still got lots to cover. So we're going to rattle on. It's very well thought out, Pete. Right, here's my team, and I'll give a quick bit of rationale for it. Sells in goal, obviously, a back three for me of Niakate, Bolly and Murillo. Montiel at wing-back on the right, Aina on the left, Gibbs White and Danilo in midfield, Hudson-Odoi, Elanga and Wood up front. So it's the team that played Man City, basically. A few reasons for it. It keeps Aina on the left. I don't mind Montiel so much push forwards. I don't like him defending particularly, and this does let us keep Aina on the left-hand side for the reasons Pete outlined. And also, I like a back three with Bolly just for mobility. We saw at Sheffield United, he played like 10 yards deeper in the first half than the rest of the back four because of that lack of pace. So hopefully this could nullify it a little bit. And I had the benefit of speaking to a Chelsea fan for the preview that's coming out tomorrow, earlier today. And he was saying how Chelsea effectively play a back three themselves now, with Cucurella inverting into midfield to play the role that Enzo Fernandez does. And that means Cole Palmer pushes out to the right with Madueke, and then Conor Gallagher plays through the middle. So I figure if we have Murillo, Aina and Danilo in sort of a triangle trying to cope with that threat as much as possible, and then I would back Bolly to do a job on Jackson, then it kind of feels to me like we're dealing as much as we can with their main attacking threats while still having the threat on the counter attack ourselves. And I would stick with Chris Wood as well. Right, I have forgotten something downstairs, so you two give your final thoughts on the game and any shoot down my formation while I'm not here, starting with Temps.
Well, the question I'd put to Matt there, Pete, is where's Yatesy, and do you not want that midfield enforcer to kick Cole Palmer, for want of a better phrase? Sangare Dominguez capable of doing that as well, but in no kind of form, fitness or rhythm. Could you improve Matt's side by picking Ryan Yates?
Well, as evidenced by my team, I'd say definitely yes. I think those two centre mids might be pretty exposed with Conor Gallagher running in behind them, and both concerned about lack of pace with Bolly. I also worry, I don't know what you think about this, Temps, but Niakate at right centre-back scares me somewhat. I mean, Niakate at left-back was, fairly concerning. I think him at right centre-back, particularly next to Montiel as well, that strikes me as a slightly concerning area. And while we might be worried most about that threat coming from the right-hand side, if I was Chelsea, I'd be sticking an awful lot of threat down the left-hand side against that team.
I think that's a big challenge when we're calling for the three centre-halves. Is that not that obvious third pick? Felipe's form at various points in the season has been good in flashes, but the fitness has cost him. There's been a few individual errors. Omobamidele came and went. But yeah, Niakate does have an error in him. He's not so hot at the aerial duels. And that's why, for me, picking the third man in midfield is advantageous over picking the third man in central defence. There's only two obvious picks in Bolly and Murillo. So for that reason, I wouldn't select Matt's team.
Oh,
Matt.
Thanks for shooting that down. Right, I shall come back to the reason that. Hang on one sec. I went downstairs shortly. Right, third sponsor for this episode is Heavy Metal Football. Another Forest fan runs this called JJ. He's actually on the Mist Rolling In podcast. I shouldn't advertise other podcasts, but if you want to check that out, then that's worth checking out. They have got a special offer on their t-shirts, 25% off your order. If you go to heavymetalfootball.co.uk, you can see the retro Labatt's inspired t-shirt on screen there, and they've got lots of Forest merchandise like that. There's a pre-order now. It ends tomorrow, so this is your chance to get your discount. I'm sorry, Shafe, I'm out of breath from just running downstairs there. But yeah, Heavy Metal Football is the place for your Forest merch. Right. Any other business before we depart? Pete Blackburn.
Oh, just very, very quick thing from me. This time last season, I rather tragically was not able to go to the Arsenal game. So I feel like this is my chance to have a massive party and lose my voice and have a great day, hopefully capped by Forest. So I'm going to be leaving my voice at the City Ground on Saturday and putting it all out there. So hopefully the players and everyone else who's there can do the same. I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm positive that we can be spending Saturday night celebrating our Premier League survival, all being well.
Very good. Anything from you, Temps?
Just a casual observation. I love us debating box-to-box midfielders when you're knackered running up and down the stairs. It probably just crystallises this, armchair punditry that we have from here, where we think we've got all the answers. But the reality is that, we're just fans shouting up a view based on what we've seen on a match day. There's so much goes off behind the scenes that we're not party to, but it's great we can have these debates and not agree with each other, but not resort to any kind of shouting match unless one of us leaves for 35 seconds when they can get pulled apart. So enjoy the chat, fellas, and let's hope we can put this whole thing to bed this weekend. As I said, confident that it's already done. But another point would be, so nice, and allow us all to enjoy that final weekend singing Waka Waka with Greg Mitchell rather than biting our nails.
Very true, very true. Right, I've got quite a few things to rattle through quickly. Normally we do a whole section on this, but we don't have time. We'll perhaps pick it up next week when it's confirmed. But it's reported Benfica chief scout Pedro Ferreira is going to join Forest in the summer after 15 years with Benfica. He's got quite the track record when you consider the success they've had in the transfer market, mostly selling but also buying, so that's an interesting one to monitor. Shout out to Harry Toffolo for being named Forest Community Champion. What a man, lovely guy. Hopefully he's with us next season, and he's had a good season on the pitch as well as off it. And a couple of quick shout outs as well. I ran downstairs, how do I do this? There, hang on, to get this. It's a Forest focused beer mat / coaster made out of wood, carved by channel member Derek, who you often see in the comments. He sent us two, actually. There's a black version and a white version. So, not good for audio, but good for YouTube. So thank you very much, Derek. Another shout out as well to Elliot Bauer, who's been doing TikTok for me. If you're considerably younger than the three people on this panel and you are on TikTok, then do check us out. He's done some good stuff. It is at ForestFocus_official on TikTok. And then finally, our next live show will be on Thursday, the 13th of June. So keep an eye out for tickets for that. Should be a good night, end of season show. I think I'll confirm all the panel and all the details next week, but just wanted to flag that so people can be aware to put that in your diary. Thursday, the 13th of June, if you want to come say hello at the Trent Navigation, of course. Right. I think that's about it. We've covered a lot there, gosh, in 50 minutes. But like you say, it all happens with Forest, doesn't it? If you haven't already, do us a favor, hit like on this video. Do consider subscribing, becoming a channel member, and give us a lovely review wherever you listen to this. Pete Blackburn, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And just to say, I saw Derek in the comments say that if we survive, he'll be driving up from West Sussex to get in the Trent with Yatesy. So if you could bring a load of those coasters for me as well at the same time, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, and you'll bail him out as well if he does get in the Trent.
Well, yeah, I'll call someone to do it. Yeah.
Very good, very good.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure. Nice to see you both and all the people watching.
It has. I have enjoyed it. We have got through a lot. Michael Temple, thank you very much.
Mate, if we don't survive and Forest do some video content of Yatesy actually swimming across the Trent, then they've missed a trick there. I'm sure Will or whoever in the marketing team has already got this list of ideas. I reckon they could chuck a cap on Yates and he'd willingly swim across the Trent for another season in the Premier League. So that's my picture of success. Maybe even before the crowds have dissipated. Maybe if Yates is on the jetty in his Speedos by, what will it be, 7:15, we can all clap him on his way and hope he gets across before he drifts to Lady Bay Bridge. But yeah, let's put it to bed this weekend. Thanks for the chat, boys.
Oh gosh, check the water quality first before you do that. I don't want any of our players getting E. coli before Burnley away or anything like that. So yeah, but if we're safe, it's not so bad. Right, we'll be back tomorrow with the opposition preview as mentioned, and then post-match show on Saturday, quite a later one because of kickoff time, probably about 9 p.m. And then we'll be back on Monday after that. So good to have everyone's company with us this afternoon. Have a good day, and we shall see you soon.